Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for choosing to spend a weeknight evening hanging out, talking about the municipal budget of all things. I am Erin Baldwin, also known as EBD. I'm the newest assembly person from Midtown, so that's District 4. How many of you know the district that you live in, your assembly district?
I can tell you the number.
You couldn't tell me the number? That's okay. Yeah. So you're downtown, north side. Cool. Nice. Who else do we have in the house? Juliet, Monte Vista, District 1, a lot of District 1.
I just moved to Midtown, but I don't know what district it is.
You're probably me then, District 4, probably me. Cool. Welcome, everybody. So I hope that tonight is informative. I would love for you to ask your questions, so please don't feel like there's any silly question. I'm going to cover a lot of material, and I would be happy to make all of these slides available to you after the fact. So please don't feel like you have to write down everything that is on these slides, because they are shareable. And let's get rolling. So this is Show Me the Money. And we're going to start by talking about why we budget and how the municipal budget gets decided. So the first thing that we need to know about the municipal budget is that it's actually quite complicated. And the reason that it's complicated is because the municipality actually houses a lot of different moving parts. So we do have these departments that provide services to the municipality. These are services like fire, police, road maintenance, the big things that you think of when you think of city government. And then there are other things that we do, like the health department, who handles animal control and makes sure that restaurants are safe and does public nursing outreach and helps with homelessness and those kinds of things. Parks and Rec, and then there's everything else, right? There's a whole slew of municipal departments that do work. And then there are these things that we have that are physical buildings, physical assets that the municipality owns. And obviously we have public libraries, we have things like the Egan Center, we have the Denina Center, we have the Performing Arts Center, which is also a municipal asset. The Harry McDonald Center, which is out in Eagle River, is also a muni building. So are all of the ice rinks in town. So these are all assets and facilities that we own and that the municipality is liable for. And when I say we, the city of Anchorage, the municipality of Anchorage owns these assets. And then we also have, inside of this same budget, we have the utilities, other parts of our government that we refer to as enterprises. So, for example, the Port of Alaska, which is right out our back door here, the Port of Alaska is technically a municipal asset. We don't pay for the port necessarily. The port actually pays for itself. That's what it means for something to be an enterprise. It is self-sustaining, yes?
Why are we one of the only states that don't have a port authority assembly?
Run by the municipality instead? That's a great question. So some of that has to do with the logistics of being in Alaska and not having additional ports that were already in existence before we started operating the Port of Alaska. There's been a lot of conversation about developing a port authority, and for a hot second, I don't know the status of this, I'd have to get back to you. There was conversation about developing an Upper Cook Inlet Port Authority with Port McKenzie. I don't know where that discussion is right now, but I would be happy to find out if that's something that you want to know about. So the port also Anchorage water and wastewater utilities. So when the water comes out of your faucet, when you flush the things away, that is a municipal utility. We used to own a telecommunications utility. We don't anymore. We used to own Municipal Light and Power, which was an electric utility. We don't own that anymore. But we do have solid waste services, so the garbage service, and also Merrill Field is a municipal asset. It's a muni airport. But those utilities and other entities, those are all self-sustaining. So taxpayer dollars do not fund those. Those are fee-based services. And so they're their own self-contained little entity. But all of that rolls up into the municipal budget because ultimately we are the fiscal authority for all of those entities. So when you look at the municipal budget in any given year, it is 3 binders worth of content. And that gets produced every single year, so that everyone can look, and it's all available publicly, everyone can look at the budget for every single part of the municipality. It is very transparent as far as where the proposal is for the money to go. So our budget boils down to 3 categories. Let's keep it simple, right? So we have staffing, we have services, and we have stuff. These are the 3 things that we pay for as a municipality. And each department has its own combination of staffing, services, and stuff. Here's how that breaks down. So when you look at these, I think I mentioned there are 3 binders that are the municipal budget. One of those is the operating budget. It's the staffing and the services. It's the people and the work that the people do. So whether that's folks at the permit center who are taking care of building permits and inspections and checking out derelict buildings, or whether it's folks at the library, all of that is part of the operating budget, the core services that the municipality provides. And then there's the stuff budget, that's the capital budget. So what are the things that we're going to spend money on that are physical things like buildings and parks and roads? And then there are the user paid services that has its own binder. And then we also have the dedicated taxes that the municipality collects. So we have a bed tax. How many of you knew that? We have a tax on hotels. We have alcohol and marijuana taxes that are fairly recent. Those funds are actually dedicated for specific purposes. So they don't just dump into the big general pool of funding. Marijuana tax dollars are earmarked for early childhood education. Alcohol tax dollars are earmarked for domestic violence prevention and behavioral health services. The bed tax actually has a 3-way earmark. And so some of that money, some of the bed tax, goes to fund the marketing for Anchorage, essentially, which is done by a group called Visit Anchorage. Some of it goes to fund the loan that we took out to build the Denina Center and to maintain the Denina Center, which the Egan Center actually got grandfathered into that. So we decided that the Egan Center needed to come along for the ride and have some maintenance funds built in. So that is also part of the bed tax. And then 1/3 of the bed tax does actually go to general government. But there's very clear distinctions about how much of the bed tax goes where. So those are all of the piece parts of the municipal budget. Now we got to talk about where the money comes from. So this is actually, if you want to follow along with me, this graphic is actually on page 2. It's a little bit hard to see here, but it's a little easier to look at when it's right in front of you. So what I want to point out here, there's one part that you don't have on your page, and it's this little dotted line that runs down the center here. So this big chunk right here in the middle, this represents the proportional amount of property taxes that are collected in the municipality. So every June, the municipality calculates, based on a whole bunch of factors, what the property tax is going to be in any given year. And roughly 46% of your property taxes, whether you pay them as a tenant or whether you pay them as a property owner, goes to the school district. That's how we fund our portion of public education. So I know ASD funding is a hot topic right now, and I'd be happy to speak to that if you would like me to. But for the purposes of this slide, about 46% of your property tax dollars go to Anchorage School District. The rest does actually help to fund municipal government. And then aside from property taxes, we also have all of these sort of smaller taxes that get collected. So the tobacco tax also helps to fund the services and the staff. So do the gas tax. So do vehicle rental taxes, car registration taxes, business personal property taxes. All of these things get rolled in and help to pay for municipal services. And then we have these other yellow blocks. You can't see them quite as well, but those are things like ambulance service fees. Those are some of the enterprise fees. We also have funds that come from investments that we've made. So the MOA Trust Fund those are earnings on when we sold Municipal Light and Power. A lot of that money got stuck in an investment account, and what we get from those investments helps to fund our city. So we didn't take the money from the sale of Municipal Light and Power and just throw it into the general fund. Some very smart people said, hey, maybe we should plan for the future and dump a lot of this money into an account that bears interest, and we can use the interest on the account to help fund government services. I'm grateful for people who think that way. And then we also have the smaller taxes in the bottom, like the alcohol tax and the marijuana tax. Those are down here. So this is laid out in terms of proportion. And the reason that I think this slide is important is because it shows people sometimes say, well, what if we just took the alcohol tax and we used it to pay for government services? Well, that's a teensy tiny little proportion of the funding that the municipality takes in. And the work that the alcohol tax does outside of funding general government services, being dedicated the way it is actually really useful. So proportionally, right, we can't just Even if we doubled our vehicle rental taxes, that doesn't change the big picture of government funding very much. The point here is that we are really heavily reliant on property taxes as a municipality. And we're reliant on property taxes more so than a lot of other cities in the United States. Part of the reason for that would be taxes. So we, again, heavily reliant on that. And then other taxes were roughly 20% of that pie. What we're getting now from the state and federal government, this number in particular, is really different than it used to be. And we will talk about that in more depth here shortly. But keep an eyeball. That 3% number has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades. So we also have something called the property tax cap. How many of you are property owners? Okay. So back in 1983, a group of people got together, assembly folks and others, and decided that we should put a limit on how much property tax we could collect in the municipality. And they created this formula that basically says that we are going to constrain the property tax based on how much tax we collected last year, how much inflation has gone up, how much new building we've had, and how much our population has increased. So we can only increase the amount of property tax we collect if those 3 things are true. Otherwise, the property tax actually ratchets down. So every time the budget is cut at the municipal level, it cranks down and we can't increase it again unless those 3 factors are true. That means that our property taxes have stayed pretty steady over time. They have increased due to inflation, much like everything else that's increased due to inflation, but the real value of our property taxes has been relatively flat. And it means that our budget has also stayed relatively flat. If you adjust our current budget for inflation, we're tracking with pretty much where the municipal budget has been for a really long time, which also means that it's really difficult to deal with expanding community needs because we have to stay within the tax cap. And the only way we can do extra things is if we do something that's outside of the tax cap. Does that make sense? Clear as mud? Everybody's like, ooh. So if you want to dig in more to how the tax cap is actually calculated, I have a funky little worksheet that I would be happy to show you for those of you who want to get really nerdy with me. But what you need to know is that this is in our municipal charter. This is actually in our city constitution. Maybe. So how many of you got property assessments in January? You got a little green card in the mail. So what happens every year is the municipality looks at all of the properties and assesses their value. And there is a very lengthy, nerdy process that makes that possible, which was different this year for the first time in a long time. And we could talk about that too if you wanted. But basically the assessed value of your home gets multiplied by the mill rate or the tax rate. And the tax cap itself is part of what helps us calculate the tax rate. So the property tax cap says we can only collect this much property tax, and the assessed value of your home dictates how much of that pie is yours to pay, and then you get assessed a property tax bill. So a lot of people are under the impression that a big increase in their property assessment is going to be a big increase in their property taxes, and that's not necessarily true, because the tax cap says here is the whole pie of property taxes, and what changes same. People pay different amounts of taxes based on where they live in Anchorage. How many of you knew that? Because I did not until I joined the assembly. Well, true, for exemptions, there are exemptions, but even the actual rate of tax is different. So inside of Anchorage, we have what's called service areas, and some of those service areas are a big area. So there's the Anchorage, the general roads and drainage service area. There's a police and fire service area that not everybody lives in. There is a parks and libraries and general services area that not everybody lives in. And then you have what's called limited road service areas. How many of you know about limited road service areas? So back when Anchorage was just getting formed up, right? We had the city of Anchorage and we had the borough of Anchorage 50 years ago. And there were a bunch of people who were living on the hillside. And at that point, the hillside was way out in the boonies, right? Nobody lived up there, just the crazy people who wanted to live on their homesteads. I shouldn't say crazy people, that's unkind. So the people who wanted space were living out there. And they didn't want to pay for the roads in the city They didn't want to pay for police service because they weren't using police service. They were served by the state troopers. They didn't want to pay for fire because the fire trucks weren't going out there. They were all on their own. And so when Anchorage mushed together the borough of Anchorage and the city of Anchorage and created the municipality of Anchorage, they cut this deal. And they said, hey, all of you folks that are living out there, we won't make you pay for any of the stuff you don't use. So they created limited road service areas. And what that means is that the chunk of the property taxes that are for roads and drainage and things like that, they stay in that little service area and they pay for their own snow removal. They pay for their own roads. They pay for their own drainage. And what they don't do is pay for any of the other roads in town. And people have some big feelings about this because actually, no. You're not actually paying for these roads. You're paying for your roads, but you are not paying for the roads in the Anchorage Bowl. So there are actually 61 different tax districts in Anchorage. Not everybody pays the same, y'all. And there have been conversations all along the way about, should we get rid of LRSA? Should we get rid of limited road service areas? Should we make every pay the same? And y'all, the political fight that will happen someday, if somebody ever decides to put that forward as a policy, is real. It will be a pitched battle. But it is a conversation that is starting to percolate more and more. As Anchorage gets built out further and further into these limited road service areas, there's some questions. Should we actually be divided up this way? But that is something to be aware of, and it does mean that the taxable value in limited road service areas is not the same as downtown. It is not the same as other places in town.
And then a whole other conversation is, aren't there roads and stuff that are maintained by the state and that kind of stuff?
Yes, there are, correct. So we have a whole host of state-owned and maintained roads in Anchorage that we do not and cannot maintain because it is the purview of the state. And spoiler alert, those are probably the roads that when you think of a really bad maintenance, those are the ones that you're probably thinking of. So I saw a hand.
My question, do you know if the limited road service areas have changed over time as things got built out, or is it stuck? This is the marker we're not going to do.
So some of them have been expanded as neighborhoods have grown. New ones have been created, which seems like counterintuitive, but new ones have been created. And then interestingly enough, there are also some neighborhoods that are up on the hillside that aren't in the limited road service area, and they're not in ARDSA, in the Anchorage roads and drainage service area either. So they don't pay for any road at all, right? So things you didn't know about your municipal government and the way that it is funded. This is a whole rabbit hole, y'all. You can go down it if